bright, shining faces. How many of you, again, show of hands, went out on a pub crawl last night? And you crawled back. Good for you. How many of you weren't as intrepid as the pub crawlers and just decided to hang around the hotel and enjoy some friends? Fabulous. And then how many of you did both? Only a few survivors there. All right. Well, we do have an interesting format for you today. I'll give a brief description of it. We haven't done this in a while. I think the last time we did was probably 2006 in San Jose. And something about Oakland brings us back. I think Peter, we did this in Oakland in 2002, right? Coffee talk. We don't have a coffee table, but we do have folks that probably drink coffee. I'm not one of them. Anyway, all right, so it will be an interactive dialogue, and we have topics so big that we needed room for 4 experts. We have them here. I'll give the brief introductions of them, and then with the short intros, and they have 90 seconds or less to tell us about their organization and the role that they play there. And then we hit the big stuff, which is they have 2 minutes to tell us what the big issues are that they're facing. And one of the folks up here shared some comments that they heard in the other room, like, oh my God, these guys can all talk. How can we keep them from blabbering on? So this will be my job. It won't be a free-for-all, I think, but I will do my best to guide the dialogue. I don't really know what they're going to say. I have some ideas. We did have a conversation earlier, but again, this is going to be hopefully some kind of a wild card discussion. Talking about big issues facing California, facing the organizations, and of course facing all of you. With that, let's get going. Actually, I can stand up while I do this here. So we have Scott Smithline, appointed by Governor Brown this past year as Assistant Director of CalRecycle. Scott has been in this industry about 10 years as a consultant, Director of Legal and Regulatory Affairs at Californians Against Waste, as an attorney at Lawyers for Clean Water 2001, and a fellow at Golden Gate University Environmental Law and Justice Clinic. He also received his Juris Doctor degree from Golden Gate University School of Law. Scott on the end, say. Bookending the group, we have Heidi Sanborn, Executive Director of the California Product Stewardship Council. They're having their 5-year anniversary. Congratulations. So Heidi's been active in the solid waste industry in California for roughly 20 years, working in various public and private positions, including serving as a consultant to local governments and in state government as a technical advisor to the chair of the former California Integrated Waste Management Board, now CalRecycle. Welcome, Heidi. To Heidi's left, your right, we have Mark Murray, the Executive Director of Californians Against Waste, with roughly 20 years experience in the industry. He's been actively involved in the development, negotiation, and passage of much of the waste reduction and recycling legislation in California, including the Volatile Garbage Container Deposit Program, and Assembly Bills 939 and 341. Mark Murray, welcome. And to Mark's left, we have Gary Wolff, who's the Executive Director of StopWaste.org, previously the Vice Chair of the California Water Resources Control Board and San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. He served as Principal Economist, and we do need economists in our field, so absolutely we're excited to have you here. Principal Economist and Engineer for the Pacific Institute for Studies in Environment, Development, and Security, so welcome Gary Wolff. So this is the easy stuff now. 90 seconds or less. Scott, tell us about your organization and your role there.
Good morning, everybody. I think you know about CalRecycle, and my boss, Director Mortensen, just gave you a background of what we're up to these days, so I'm not going to waste our time on that. My role, I'm Assistant Director for Policy. We're honestly about 8 months in, and I'm still learning about my role, but I think it depends on the week and the day. Sometimes I'm the liaison in the governor's office, sometimes I'm the liaison on legislative issues, on very specific things. Sometimes I have a broader role and I work to look across the department and different policy issues and make sure they're working in some kind of harmony, or if we have weaknesses, so a higher level of strategic thinking. It really depends on what we're doing. As Carol just said, we have a very aggressive agenda for 75%. And she doesn't want to get stuck in the weeds, and so my job is to climb down into the weeds and see where we're stuck, unstuck us, and climb back up. So.
Thank you. Gary?
So for those who don't know, just to be certain, stopwaste.org is a pseudonym for a government agency, two government agencies, the Alameda County Waste Management Authority, which is a joint powers authority of the 17 agencies in Alameda County that have solid waste franchising authority. And then our other legal body is the Alameda County Source Reduction and Recycling Board, created by the voters 22 years ago. And these two governing boards are integrated in such a way that we operate as a single agency. But because people constantly confuse us with waste management or with Alameda County, we rebranded as stopwaste.org a number of years ago. And I'm delighted to be here. I just have to say, I've never had this many people in my living room before, so thank you for coming.
All right, Mark.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Murray, I'm the Executive Director of Californians Against Waste, and I think most of you are familiar with CRRA, but the organization has been around for 35 years. It's an environmental organization, first and foremost, with a membership of folks that care about waste reduction and recycling policies. It began as a merger of folks that wanted to advance a bottle and can recycling law in California, and folks from the Sierra Club who created this independent environmental organization 35 years ago. I've been with the organization for 25 years. This is sometimes we describe Californians Against Waste as a recycling policy organization, but first and foremost, we're an environmental organization who does environmental politics. And when we're really successful with environmental politics, then we get to participate in the policy-making process. But at first, we have to be politically successful. And that's part of what I try and bring to this issue area, is to move the ball forward and create the political environment where we can have policy discussions and actually move some policy in California. So I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get into that discussion here. We've got a professional staff in California, in Sacramento. We used to have Scott Smithline as our deputy, but now Nick Lapis, who's in the back of the room, Teresa Bowie and Sue Vang, who've been with you so far this week, are on our staff, and we've got a couple other folks in Sacramento. So we are in the last 4 weeks of the legislative session right now, a number of bills that are moving forward, and we're fully engaged in terms of trying to move those policies, get the best out of those policies possible, and hopefully be able to get into that today.
Thank you, Mark. And Heidi.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Heidi Sanborn. I'm the Executive Director of the California Product Stewardship Council. As Stephen said, we formed 5 years ago. We love to celebrate it with you. You're all welcome to the Sky Room after your words event tonight from 6:30 to 8:30 to celebrate with us. And all the accomplishments that we've achieved in the last 5 years working together. As the Executive Director, I really helped found the organization and set it up, and we're really grassroots. It started with local governments that really wanted to see producer responsibility approaches because we were not seeing source reduction. And I think Annie said it very well yesterday in the keynote that we can't just solve this with recycling and picking which recycling bin we're going to choose. We have to get to source reduction, and we really never did that. We did a great job of recycling, but if you're going to really reduce costs and you're going to really save materials and resources, you've got to get source reduction first. And when it comes to 70% of the waste stream, that's product waste. And that's why we've started this council, because we've got to get the producers engaged in green design. Our tagline is design it green, take it back. And we mean it. We really encourage companies, we work with them to do that. We've partnered with many businesses. We've got businesses on our board, haulers. We have many board members here. And we're very proud of what we do. We've got a policy committee. We talk to our associates every month on a conference call. And it really comes from all of you. So we thank you for all the support and the ongoing work we're going to have to do, as Carol said, to get us to 75% and beyond.
All right, thank you very much. Let's kick it back that direction now, Heidi. 2 minutes.
Yeah.
What are the big issues you're facing?
Big issues we're facing. I think there's two. I think we've lost our sight on source reduction. I also think we really need to be honest about the influence of corporate money on our political system. We're seeing it daily in Sacramento, and we're going to actually congratulate Supervisor Miley tonight here in Alameda County for taking on and passing the country's first EPR ordinance for pharmaceuticals. Because it's huge. The reason it's so huge is because the pharmaceutical lobby spent $841 million last year lobbying in the United States. They out-lobby every other industry group in this country, including gas and oil. Taking them on this way has its risks. They may very well get sued, and it could very well bury them. And what we need to do is work together and be united, that producers of products have to share in the end-of-life responsibility for the safe management of those products. The end. And we have to stand together to do that. This is not going to be easy. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And we have to all save our energy, get our rest, and go in the next day for a good fight. Because for a while, it's going to be really hard. And I've traveled the world. I've spoken in Brussels and in other places, and I've seen it. The producers of the same companies in other countries behave completely differently than they do in the United States. They don't even understand why their company behaves this way in the United States. They're embarrassed about it. And so we are going to have a much tougher fight here to get producer responsibility than in any other country in the world. I'm quite convinced of it, and it's because of the influence of money in politics. So it's just something to be aware of. And again, the source reduction issue, we have to get to the producers in the front end of the system to get true source reduction. And building facilities is great, but it's also expensive. The most cost-effective thing we can do is not generate waste in the first place. And we need to get back to that mantra, which is back in the
I'm very focused right now on the last 4 weeks, last 3.5 weeks of the legislative session, and so I want to talk about some issues that are pending there. But in terms of big picture, the things that we're focused on that are going to go beyond those 3 weeks are implementation of AB 341 in terms of the 75% measure and the update and expansion of the bottle and can recycling law. Both of those things are things we're going to be working on in the fall and hopefully being obviously, 341 is more implementation of CalRecycle. Bottle bill is going to be legislation next year to take the program to the next level. In terms of right now with the legislative session, thanks to political organizing, thanks to work at the local government level, thanks to the efforts of various different nonprofit organizations, there are 3 key issues that are pending before the legislature in the recycling area in the last 3.5 weeks. Number 1, we've been working with Assemblymember Chesbro, composters, waste haulers, local governments in the development of an organics waste reduction policy, a composting policy, an organics recycling policy, I'm going to call it. It's inclusive of composting, it's inclusive of anaerobic digestion, and somehow we're going to get this policy into a piece of legislation. We've teed it up in terms of with an issue that has been rolling throughout the legislative session, which is utilization of biomethane and how that relates to the state's RPS standard, renewable portfolio standard. And so with the push from the administration, with pushing from composters and a number of Northern California local governments, we're going to try and wedge that issue in and develop that piece as part of the AB 341 implementation. The second issue that is pending that is, I think, going to be a fantastic opportunity for moving the ball in terms of a product-specific recycling policy is the mattress recycling bill by Senator Hancock from this area. And this is an issue that actually emerged from this community. Nonprofit organization, community group, a small business organization in the city of Oakland identified a problem in terms of mattresses, illegal dumping of mattresses, and that created the initiative for us to move a producer responsibility policy for the recycling of mattresses. This is a policy that, if we're successful, and I would give it a 75% chance of success at this point, we're going to be able to put what I think is a great recycling policy in place. Now, Heidi talked about the dynamics of our political system. California, like the U.S. in general, is a free market political system, and all the stakeholders that participate in that process have a say. Unlike a European system or a parliamentary system where you actually have a government that can initiate policies, the policies here come from this collective of interest groups. And so I want to tell you that the very best mattress recycling policy we had occurred about 2 weeks ago. Teresa Bowie from our office wrote that up. Policy will never be as good as it was 2 weeks ago when she wrote it. It's only going to go downhill in terms of that policy because we've got to compromise with the various interest groups. The idea is to put that bill in place, to get that policy moving forward, and then, just like the bottle and can recycling law, just like AB 939, tweaking it. Just mention briefly, plastic bag ban, very important issue from an organizing standpoint. You guys have done a great job in terms of moving that issue at the local level. I'm afraid that for the next 2 years, that issue is probably going to stay at the local level. I am not optimistic that we're going to see a statewide ban happen this year in Sacramento, so we're going to continue to need your help in terms of moving those bans at the local level.
Thanks, Mark. All right, Gary.
Yeah, I think the big issue, not necessarily just facing us, but facing everyone, given sort of what has happened in the last 4 to 5 years in the global economy, and the tension, the anxiety, the stress level that has become background to us all now, and we don't necessarily realize on a day-to-day basis just how bad it is, just how stressed we are. I think the key issue in the relationship with the public is to be really, really honest about why we're doing what we're doing, and really, really clear about what we're asking the public to do. So in terms of honesty, it's completely within bounds to remind people that we're living in a 100-year window of one of the great mass extinctions in history. 50 years ago, we realized what we were doing globally, and 50 years from now, we'll either have solved those problems or we'll be in a serious, serious world of hurt. There's a generational change going on that's very, very important, and is part of the reason why recycling and many, many other things are so important environmentally. It's also true that the global economy is very unstable, even though it's been growing and many people around the world have been lifted up out of poverty. It's a global economy that's based on once-through model. In a finite world, a once-through model of materials just doesn't work in the long run. And similarly, an economy that's based on credit, the availability of credit as opposed to the productive abilities of people, is just a flawed economy from the ground up. We have to remind people of that. And then when you think of those challenges and then start focusing, what does that mean practically? It just means recycling for us in our world. And by recycling, we mean put the stuff in the right place. It isn't a lot more complicated than that. Sure, we need infrastructure. Sure, we need contracts and agreements and laws. But ultimately, it comes down to putting the right stuff in the right place. We found in 2008, doing our waste characterization study in this county, that 60% of what was in the garbage cans was recyclable or compostable in programs we already have. The programs weren't being fully utilized. Last year, we benchmarked 900 single-family waste carts. And in single-family in Alameda County, almost everyone, except a few people in sort of the most rural, furthest out parts of the county, everyone's got 3-cart service. So everyone can put, and food scraps are allowed in all those services too, so everyone can put food scraps and green waste in that cart, everyone can put the recyclables in the single-stream cart or the dual-stream cart in Berkeley. The infrastructure's there. How can it be that 60% of what is in the cart doesn't belong there? We're not fully utilizing it. And so this last year, we benchmarked 900 carts, and we found that even in 2012, 2011, with the downturn in the economy and increased efforts on our part since 2008 and that of all of our member agencies, we still had more than 40% good stuff in the garbage carts. And when we looked at the size of the carts, the mini cans and the 32-gallon carts had 39%. So it wasn't that the small cart users were virtuous and the large cart users were evil. It was that people don't fully know how to use the system. And when you look at the mass of the good stuff that's in the carts, 75% of the weight of good stuff being thrown away in those single-family carts was in the 32-gallon and 20-gallon carts. Why? Because most of the carts are now 32-gallon or 20-gallon carts. We've got people to go down to smaller size, but they're still throwing away lots of stuff that could go elsewhere. And if that stuff goes elsewhere, if we put the food scraps in the right place, we put the recyclables in the right place, we create jobs, we reduce climate impacts, we help the environment in numerous ways. It's all good in terms of those big challenges. And it's all very straightforward. This is why Lisa Jackson, the U.S. Administrator of EPA, when asked on a television interview, at the end of the interview, what's the one thing that people in this country can do that would be best for the environment? She said, recycling. It's a jobs bill, it's an environmental program, it's a climate program, it's all done in one. And so just being really clear with people, this is all we're asking. Use the infrastructure that's there, be thoughtful in the way you sort things. That's the starting point. Now later, we can push people on all the other issues. Maybe not later, but on parallel, try to push people on all the issues about what we purchase, because that affects what you've got at end of life to deal with. But just the simple thing of it's in your hands, you're going to put it someplace, put it in the right place, is very straightforward. And being honest to people about why that is so important, I think, is the primary challenge.